Charlie Rose, speaking to him on his PBS show, sat down and had this discussion about the interview. Take a listen. Roll it.
What's his definition of big, and does he believe in his deep recesses of his own mind that the chance of that has slipped away?
No, I don't. I think his, despite all his dramatic doubt, despite that tone of that kind of slightly autumnal tone to especially the end of this piece, I think.
Meaning he's in the fall of his presidency.
Getting there, sure.
Okay.
It's September.
Yes, okay.
That the fact that this country didn't fall into a depression, an economic depression, which it could easily have done.
All right. Now, he's claiming credit. The answer goes on, and I'm going to get to the rest of the interview in the next segment. I wanted to start out with that one because there are a number of claims being backed to say that we are to credit the president for being with us during this time. I know Colin Powell did it, and that was one of the reasons. And a lot of people just have that feeling. But that feeling, and we don't go by our feelings, right? That doesn't mean we don't feel. It doesn't mean they don't factor in. And it's fine to say, oh, I feel like he's been through us through the tough times. Well, he is president of the United States, twice elected. He is our president. What I don't understand is how that translates to the fact that he saved us. He did not save us. His policies exacerbated the situation and have put into place roadblocks for further economic growth. And we can detail that, obviously, with Obamacare. We can detail that with the failure of TARP. TARP under President Bush, and then then we had the Recovery Act, which predicted 5% unemployment at this juncture. 4% growth. That was last year. Not even hitting it. Not even close. Why is that? Is that because President Obama's prescription and the defenders of this plan were not really recognizing human nature? I say yes. See, this is so easy because it really goes to, do you believe that human nature has changed? Do you think we are incentivized by our own individual motives, outcomes? Do people do things in an altruistic way through government? Do we sit back and say, I am going to believe in government because government has shown that it has demonstrated the ability and power that is above what we can do as human beings with our nature? I'm serious here. I know it sounds like, where are you going with this? I'm saying that the ruling class believes that government has evolved because human nature has evolved. And I dare say it has not. I also say the basic laws of math and economics have not changed. 2 plus 2 does not equal 5, no matter how many times you throw a multiplier in there. You just can't do that, and I'm speaking to the multiplier theory. Because when it is practiced, the idea of government spending, stimulating demand through redistribution, by the way, and that's the key, that's distributing. If the economy is a pool and the government's a poolside attendee, and what the government does is dip the pail into the deep end, take that water, go to the shallow end, pour it in, and say there's a lot more water in there. More water. We expand the amount of water. Oftentimes, of course, the water spills out along the way, and I'll take the metaphor only to that. My point is that what you hear from David Remnick and others is to write something that does not translate and does not line up with what has happened. And it is based on the idea, the policies, is that human nature has changed. Because if you look at the promises and say, okay, government's going to spend this, government's going to save this, and they change the language, they always have to change the language, you're going to get a policy that fails to live up to expectations. And then you're going to get the revisionists come in and tell you how it hasn't failed. It was just worse than we thought it was. They're going to change what it was because what they used to address it did not work. And their answer is always more money and always more government. It does not work. $10 billion. He's going to speak about the auto bailout. $10 billion. And that's not including cash for clunkers. That's not including the tax protection of GM profits of $30 million. That's not including those. No. It's not including what it did in fracturing our trust in the foundation of our economic system with the rule of law with bondholders that were put to the back of the bus. This is a revisionist view through a guy who is very bright and can tell a great story. And the interview's kind of, well, it's all wandering, meandering, but the idea is this. I'm going to write a tale that's going to explain that we have the problems we do now, despite the fact that we've tried everything President Obama wanted to put in place in his first term. That's the goal. So let's get back to the economic argument of this. Let's go to, well, the president's going to meet with the Pope. Interesting characterization by the press on this, stressing their shared concern over inequality. Roll it.
This comes at a good time for the president. It's a chance for him to align himself with the agenda of the very popular new Pope at a time when the president's own popularity here at home is at a low point. It's a chance to pair the president's own agenda on income inequality with that of the Pope, who's been very outspoken on the subject. In fact, the president has quoted the Pope on the subject as recently as last month. So this is something for which the White House is very much planning and looking forward to.
President Obama is going to be going to Rome in March and meeting with the Pope. He's going to meet with Pope Francis on March 27th. And Robin, as you know, the president has talked so much about inequality, one of the big themes of the Pope as well.
With the Pope as well. And when I was there with the Pope, he gave me a heads up that he was going to be talking.
So you kept it quiet.
but they are very similar.
And that is what they're going to be talking about.
The White House announced this morning that President Obama will meet with Pope Francis at the Vatican during a European trip in March. A statement says the president looks forward to discussing with Pope Francis their shared commitment to fighting poverty and growing inequality.
Okay. Income inequality is a wonderful thing to focus in on because it will not address the people and the individuals within the stats. It will not address and adjust the stats that are being used to measure it for oftentimes inflation, but also tax treatment of things. And we see the greatest amount of income inequality in the disparity of people in the top 10% coming through since President Obama took office. And so the very problem that he's trying to address, well, we look at the stock market and the gains it has made, well, that goes to the top 10%. But Crane, you're arguing against what he said, but you just said that analyzing the fundamentals, you didn't look at people individually. I'm just going to tell you that I can debunk this 6 days a week, twice on Sunday. But you can see a greater amount of income inequality. It can exist in the sense of you won't have as much economic mobility and people making money if you put the policies together like we've seen out of this president, and we see more of them. Because what it doesn't allow to happen is the natural process of investment to the individual and that reward being rewarded with the rule of law that protects the individual from the gains that they have made. Reward that they are not penalized or forced to take on other expenses by government mandate. Reward if we look at the Fed in a strong, stable dollar where you're not looking to protect your dollars from inflation. What you're doing is you are willing to invest those and save those. So the very thing that President Obama is trying to tackle here, he is undermining. But quite frankly, I don't care about income inequality because that would assume that we're all equal. And while we are equal under the law and should be, I think we've kind of changed that with the Holder Justice Department, but I digress. We're not equal. We have different interests. We have different passions. God's blessed us, making us in his own image, but also making us unique. And income inequality suggests that we should all be equal. That means somebody has to make us equal. And who is that? The ruling class. I want to speak to you that have a dream. I know you're out there. I know you listen to this show, and I am so blessed to have you in it. I want to speak to the producers, the people that are taking their gifts and using them to bless society with. Oh, you're worshiping the dollar. No, I'm not. No, that would be the leftist government Christian translation of that. What I am doing is I'm worshiping God, and I'm thanking him for the creation that he has in us as individuals. And I am recognizing that freedom is the only way that we are able to achieve our God-given goals. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth